our preference would be to get a shelter dog, but obviously a lot of shelter dogs are mutts like me.
What had he described himself as? Mutt is another term for mongrel, one of the worst things you could call someone whose parents are from different races. In his first press conference as president-elect, was it self-deprecation or trying to take ownership of an abusive term?
The whole appeal of me as an artist is, I mean, I did have things that were initially seen as strikes against me, like being from Canada, being an actor, being light-skinned, being Jewish. There's all these things that I guess in stereotypical rap world don't really fit the package.
I identify myself as a Puerto Rican and black male.
As a multiracial student.
I'm white, Japanese, and a little Puerto Rican.
I identify myself as Mexican, Irish, American.
I identify myself as black and Hispanic.
Multiracial, so African American, Jewish, Native American.
I'm Italian and Jamaican.
Multiracial Americans have been in the Americas for as long as there have been settlers here. The earliest European settlers would often rape or marry the Native Americans and/or the slaves they had brought from Africa. In addition, there were also a number of African slaves and Native Americans who also had children together. This pattern of whites raping the natives and their slaves continued on for quite some time and led to numerous children being of mixed race. In the 19th century, terms emerged to discuss the ethnicity of these children. Categories such as mulatto, quadroon, octoroon, hexadecaroon, and quintroon were all used to indicate mixture of ethnicity. In addition, terms like mestizo, indicating Native American and white children, and métis, French for the same idea, arose in America's early history. What is interesting to note in the early American multiracial history is that when one looks at photos of slaves, they become noticeably lighter in skin tone as time goes on. This could possibly be attributed to increased mixing in the slave populations by the white slave owners. Furthermore, very few African Americans have, so to speak, purely black blood. They often come from European or Native American descent. For instance, in the 1918 census, the Census Bureau estimated that roughly 3/4 of the black population was mixed black and white. While miscegenation was forbidden, rape was far too common. This led to slaves on the plantation treating these children differently. While they often would still look black, they noticed the difference and acted accordingly. These children were in the middle, often shunned by white society, but not fully accepted by black society either.
Beauty, particularly for women, in America is whiteness, okay? Blonde, thin, beautiful, blue-eyed, white, right? And so for black people, that is a very serious problem that many don't realize exists. And that relates to people of mixed race because historically you've been taught then that if you can't be white, then at least you want to be mixed, right? So there is a little bit of resentment towards them because of what this society has taught us to want, but then there's also acceptance because you know what their life is like.
Kind of by my parents a little bit. My mom is always calling me black. My dad's always calling me Puerto Rican. Even though my dad is black and my mom's Puerto Rican. It's really stupid, but it's fine.
While one might think that this would cause them to develop their own community, this did not happen. Instead, they would often have to struggle alone through their own racial identity.
It's kind of hard to connect to a multiracial community, so it's kind of it's kind of isolating at times.
No?
Not really. I think people are usually identified as one race or another. In Fieldston, I don't know about 5 biracial kids or something like that. So we don't really have our own community. It's either black people or Spanish people or white people.
Not really. It's more just like the big genres, and then you can kind of go to whatever you fit into.
Mm-hmm. I don't really know anything about multiracial communities. I know.
No, not really.
The term miscegenation was coined after the Civil War to provoke debate over whether or not blacks and whites should intermarry. Laws prohibiting mixed marriage had been in place since the colonial era. The 1883 case, Pace v. Alabama, upheld anti-miscegenation laws and deemed them constitutional. Moreover, it was not merely blacks and whites who could not intermarry. It was whites in nearly every other ethnic group. It was not until over 80 years later, during the 1967 case, Loving v. Virginia, that anti-miscegenation laws were deemed unconstitutional.
All the races, like black, Hispanic, I think they're pretty much on one side of the spectrum, and then white is on the other. If you're white and black or Hispanic, then I can see there being a little struggle within yourself. But when you're black and Hispanic, you're pretty much on one side of the line.
In light of these laws, it is particularly interesting to see that interracial relationships still occurred. There were many mixed children, and through the mechanism of hypo-descent, they were often seen as black. Hypo-descent is the assignment of a multiracial child to the ethnic group seen within the society as inferior. For instance, the product of a black and white coupling would be seen as black. While this practice no longer exists in the same rationale, it does so visually. People are more inclined to identify those who look black as simply black, without considering mixed ancestry.
What this country really teaches black people, consciously and subconsciously, is that they should want to be white, you know, to be mixed, right? Malcolm X in particular, for example, his mother married his father, particularly because his father wanted to marry a lighter-skinned woman so that his children could be lighter-skinned, so that they wouldn't have to endure the hardships that he endured throughout his life because of his dark complexion.
When I went to Middlebury, there was a lot of pressure to be part of the, I think it was called at the time the Black Student Union. They couldn't understand why I didn't want to be a part of it, and I said, well, if I'm going to be part of that, then I really need to join Hillel and find where the one or two Native Americans are and be part of that too, and I don't feel like it, I just want to be me.
It's not so much multiracial. I don't fulfill like the stereotype of what like a Latina or a Hispanic person is supposed to be, like, you know, ghetto or like darker skin or like the big hoop earrings. Like, I'm not that, and the fact
Doing
is, like,
something
really
halfway, so you sort of halfway fulfill one group stereotype.
Not really. It's just like if you're Asian, you're like really good at math, like those kind of things.
One could make an argument that issues of multiraciality are not really a problem whatsoever.
No, I think it's an awareness issue more than a problem issue.
I don't think it's too much of a problem.
And that point could easily be corroborated. The strongest piece of evidence could be the election of Barack Obama, the son of a white mother and a black father. However,
for example, President Obama is multiracial just as I am, yet he's always called the first African-American president. That doesn't make me angry, but I just feel like it's not totally accurate.
Sounds like
it is understandable to have a problem with calling someone multiracial black. It is an example of the aforementioned hypo-descent. Being multiracial is a unique identity. While perhaps acceptance isn't a problem right now, recognition of a multiracial people is what seems to be the chief concern. The identities do not seem to be fixed.
I guess if you're like with a group of people that's more one than the other, like if I was with a group of, let's say, black guys or something, or a group of Hispanic guys, I guess I would identify more with that group.
It seems that the issue of multiracial identity doesn't seem to be an internal one. It seems to be amongst how other people see them as individuals.
People really don't think of multiracial, they'll think of biracial as just black or white. So you're only biracial if you're like half black. So I think people will think of me as a white student, or if you look more black, they'll think of you as a black student.
Most people don't look at me and think I'm Asian, even though I'm almost half Japanese. So that affects it a little, I guess.
So the way you see yourself is different than how other people would see you?
I think so.
So how would you say other people do tend to identify you?
Mainly just white.
The issue of multiracial identity will only stop being an issue once people recognize multiracial people outside of strictly either black or white or Hispanic or Asian or any other race. While race, a social construct, isn't necessarily a spectrum, it doesn't divide into strictly defined categories either. When people are able to realize this and see multiracial people as just that, multiracial, this unspoken problem of identity will be a problem no more.
We have like the China or Chinese heritage assembly, then there's black assemblies. There's no like multiracial. You're always made to choose one.